Hi, my name is Bethany Dickens. I'm with the University of West Georgia in the class of Psychology of Classroom Learning. We're going to be focusing today on task motivation through multiple theories. We will walk through a specific task looking through the lens of multiple motivation theories. We will look at the expectancy value theory, self-determination theory, goal orientation theory, and attribution theory. The expectancy value theory says that motivation can be determined and increased based on the expectancy of success and the value that is placed on the task. Expectancy is a person's belief in their ability to be successful at a task. Value is the level of importance a person places on completing a task. The value is broken down further into the various types of values. A task's value can be broken down into 4 different sub-values. Attainment value is the importance of doing well, how important it is to a person to do well on a task. Intrinsic value is the personal enjoyment that a person expects to gain from a task. Utility value is the usefulness of the task for future goals, meaning how important is this task for what a person wants to accomplish in the future. And cost is considered in multiple ways: the financial burden, the effort, the opportunity, the emotional cost, and the commitment compared to other goals. For my task, I wanted to establish an exercise habit through an exercise routine. My expectation was that I could work out for 30 minutes a day for 4 or 5 days a week. I also set a secondary, more short-term goal expectation of walking 10,000 steps per day. This was a built-in fail-safe, so to speak. I know in the past that I have failed at this task, and I wanted to make sure that I had a built-in success in order to stay motivated to stay the course with the task. As far as the value of this task, there was no true attainment value. I have no self-identification in the task. I'm not a person that enjoys working out. So intrinsically, I had no expectations for enjoyment from this task. However, I expected to feel better physically and mentally, so to that extent, there was high intrinsic value. The cost value was minimal financially, making the motivation to begin easy. The time cost seemed negligible at first. 30 minutes for 4 or 5 days a week seemed doable. However, this proved to be a high cost. With work and home obligations, finding 30 minutes to myself was tough. The utility cost was high. This task is very useful to my future plans to be able to do things physically in the future as I age that I would have trouble doing if I did not establish these habits. So, how can this task transfer to other theories of motivation? The self-determination theory focuses on the types of motivation that people have rather than just the amount. This theory suggests that people have 3 basic psychological needs: autonomy, which is the need to feel in control of one's choices and behavior; competence, which is the need to feel effective and in control of one's activities; and relatedness. This means the need to feel connected and have a sense of belonging with others. So, how does the self-determination theory relate to the task of establishing an exercise habit? This task has a lot of autonomy. I'm able to choose the amount of time devoted to the task, which in my case is 30 minutes a day for 4 days. Also, I'm able to choose my exercise program, and I choose to have a primary and secondary goal, giving me more autonomy with this task. I was able to create the parameters of the routine, such as how many days I wanted to do this, how much time I was willing to give, and this gave me more control and creating a sense of competence. In this task, I'm also able to choose the weights that I feel more comfortable with, which adds to my feeling of competence. The aspect of relatedness for this task is within the community of people that are included in the workout program. The program offers a group of people that can communicate with each other and share like stories, struggles, and successes. This theory of motivation works well with the idea of establishing an exercise habit. Having control, feeling competent, and being about related people are all motivators to continue something that is admittedly not a preferred task. The next theory that I looked at to apply to my task was the goal orientation theory. This theory focuses on the why behind task engagement. This theory is broken down into performance or mastery orientation and is sometimes thought of as demonstrating or developing competence. Demonstrating is proving that you are able or capable to do something, or in the negative, it is demonstrating not showing a lack of ability. Developing is where the person wants to learn something for the task, or in the negative form, a person wants to avoid a misunderstanding, so they focus harder on a task. The goal orientation theory is an interesting theory to apply to the task of establishing an exercise habit. In my case, there could be both performance approach and avoidance goals. For instance, I would like to prove to myself and to others that I'm able to create this habit, but I'm also not wanting to be seen as a failure. So both performance approach and avoidance can be true. In my case, the task was not based on a mastery goal. A mastery approach would be to approach the task in order to learn a new exercise that would be beneficial for my age, and the mastery avoidance goal would be focusing on unlearning improper form or exercise routines that have been ingrained in me from a younger age. Because I learned from the expectancy value theory that I'm not finding intrinsic value or enjoyment in this task, I'm not motivated by the idea of learning something new. That's a bonus, I would say, but not a motivating factor. The final theory that I looked at through the lens of my task was the attribution theory. This theory suggests that there are perceived causes of success and failure, and these perceptions impact motivation. The attribution theory suggests that there are 3 dimensions of what people attribute their success to. Their success would be based on location, duration, and controllability. For this theory, location is the success or failure internal or external, meaning is it up to me or is it based on someone else's judgment? Duration asks, is the task a long-term requirement, meaning the results will not be shown for a while, or is it short-term, possibly even being smaller achievement goals along the path to success? Lastly, the ability of the person to control the task. Is the person in control of the requirements of the task? Are there other things that are uncontrollable that play into the success or failure of the person, such as health, or their group members, or the ease or difficulty of the task? When applying the attribution theory to my task of establishing an exercise habit, there were many factors that I attributed to my success. My motivation was internal, meaning that I wanted to prove to myself that I can stick with a routine because I know it's good for me, as opposed to being motivated by showing others my results or looking a certain way, which could be external. This leads to the duration component of my task. The main task is a stable duration since it's long-term, probably even lifelong, in order to be considered successful. However, I also have a secondary task that is an unstable task, since it's based on a smaller daily goal of 10,000 steps per day. However, the unstable smaller goal is what I think helps me stay motivated to finish the main task as a whole of creating an exercise habit routine. The task itself was controllable. There were many factors that were in my control. I was able to choose the duration of the routine, I was able to choose the program, and I was able to choose the time of day that I completed the task. However, there are aspects of the task that are uncontrollable. My health, my mood, the routine that's scheduled throughout the program for the day. These things all come together to determine if I consider this task a success or a failure, and to determine motivation for the long-term task goal. So the question is, how can we as teachers apply these theories of motivation to teaching? According to the expectancy value theory, students have to have buy-in to the task. They must expect to be successful. This is expectancy. If the students don't believe they can, then they won't. This becomes the burden of you as the teacher to have high expectations and to carry those expectations to the students. Students tend to have less confidence when learning new skills and will need you to continue to remind them of their expectations. Also, they must see some value in the task, whether intrinsic, attainment, utility, or cost. Students oftentimes will hold no enjoyment in a task, so there's no intrinsic value. The teacher must tap into the attainment and utility value for the student. Showing students how things are applicable to more than just the moment that they're in often helps to develop their motivation. According to the self-determination theory, students must feel like they have some sort of autonomy in order to develop and maintain motivation. Students' feelings of competence will maintain their motivation. If your students feel like they have relatedness, commonality amongst their peers, they'll stay motivated in a task because they won't feel isolated. You must give students enough autonomy in a task to maintain the motivation while still having boundaries and guidelines for the task. As we talked about in the expectancy value theory, many students lack confidence in new skills. This affects a student's feelings of competence. As teachers, we often have to talk students into feeling competent in a task or subject. Students need to know that someone believes in them, and then they feel more open to believing in themselves. As we know, peer support is very important to students. Many times motivation is not brought on by peer support, as much as peers who are all on the same level playing field. This speaks to the relatedness aspect of self-determination. If there are others who are like-minded or alike in ability, it gives a sense of belonging. Teachers can help by being cognizant of grouping and partnering students to create this sense of relatedness. According to the goal orientation theory, your students will either be motivated by performance or mastery of a task. Students will either be motivated by proving themselves or protecting themselves. This is known as approach or avoidance. Your duty as a teacher is to find out what drives your students. Are they concerned with proving themselves to others, or are they more worried about not looking like they're incapable, protecting themselves? Or are they driven by learning? They actually enjoy to learn new skills. Maybe your student is simply not wanting to know, not know, so they're motivated to learn just so that they don't fall behind. You have to find the goal of your students and use this to speak to their motivational language throughout the learning task. According to the attribution theory, your students will either have internal or external motivation for success. They will either be motivated by the joy of the task, or they will be motivated by grades or prizes or something else. You have to determine what they attribute their success to. If a task is stable or long-term, it will possibly be more challenging for the students to stay motivated. Waiting to see success can dampen motivation. For instance, if your student is motivated by grades, but you only grade big projects, this will be hard for this student to stay motivated. They might need smaller graded items in order to feel that sense of accomplishment and continue working on the task of learning in your class. In the same vein, students must have or feel like they have some sense of control over the task to maintain motivation. For many students, being told exactly what to do with no wiggle room stifles their motivation because the moment they do not understand or do not know how to do something, they stop because they feel that it's hopeless at that point. Giving the students control allows them to maintain motivation because it gives them the freedom to make mistakes and make their own choices. Also, when students have more controllability, it gives them buy-in because they're part of the process. This helps to develop their motivation. What I learned from applying a single task to multiple motivational theories is that motivation is essential to task completion. Whether the subject is a child or an adult, no matter the situation, there must be some form of motivation for task completion. Motivation can be derived in many ways, through many catalysts, and is very personal. Many people are not aware of the type of motivation that they require. As teachers, we have our duty to motivate our students to learn. We will need to apply many and varying forms of motivation through many approaches. What works for one student may not apply to the next. Similarly, what motivates a student in one situation might not work in a different situation or a different subject. We as teachers must be flexible, understanding that we are working with human beings who are fickle and ever changing.